Hey guys, this is Fergal from Poker VIP. We are back for another series over on Betsafe Poker. This is going to be Poker for Beginners, the next step. So the idea is that we are, first of all, in our first series we showed you how to beat the lowest limit. So when you have first made a deposit and you're looking to learn cash games, this is when you've built up your bankroll a little bit and you're looking to start taking some shots at some higher limits. So we're going to be playing some 10NL today. It's going to follow the exact same format as the last video. We are going to be playing 3 regular tables simultaneously. It's a live play video, so this is me talking through my thought process as we go. And hopefully I will show you a thing or two about how to go about beating these limits and to build your bankroll even further. So the first thing to note is that we have incorporated a HUD into our game, which we didn't have in the last series. So for those of you that aren't familiar, a HUD is essentially a program that displays some key statistics about the players that you are playing against. So it takes all of the hands that you've played and it will display relevant statistics about your opponent. So what kind of percentage of hands they're playing, what kind of percentage of hands they're raising, how aggressive they are, and so on and so forth. So I'll go into a little bit more detail. At the moment, we don't have any sort of samples against any of the opponents at our tables because it's the first time I've been playing with them all. But as we start gaining a bit of a feel for how people are playing, I'll talk a little bit more about the statistics that I use and how you can incorporate them into your game and make some adjustments to go about beating the game at a higher limit, essentially, or at a higher win rate. So as I said, we're going to jump straight into the action. So it looks like our table at the top right may break up now, which would be unfortunate, but we can just set up a new one if needs be, not a big deal. And as I said, I'll just be talking through each and every spot as they arise. So we went for the steal there with the 4-5. A little bit loose, but I think it's going to be okay. And we have 4 people at the table here. 2 people are sitting out though, which is a shame. And we have 10s heads up. We're very, very happy to go ahead and 3-bet here. In a heads up match, we're not planning on folding our 10s here. If he comes back over the top, we're going to get the money in. If he calls, then we will play post-flop poker. So he decides to fold though, which is, fine by me. So it looks like this table is going to break. Let me go see if I can find another one. And we'll just get this into focus there now, and we're good to go. The joys of online poker. One table breaks, we just find a new one immediately. Not a big deal at all. So you will find that when you play regular tables, they will break up from time to time. Hopefully it doesn't happen too often. Hopefully that's the first time it'll happen throughout the session. We've got ace-5 here on the button. We're going to be bringing this in for an open, if it's folded to us. So just to talk to you a little bit about our sizings as we're going to be going through the video. So I change my bet size depending on where we are at the table. So if we are on the button, we are min-raising. If we're in the mid position or the cutoff positions and we're bringing it in for a raise, we'll be 2.5xing. If we're under the gun, we will be 3xing. And if we're in the small blind, we will also be 3xing. So this guy has checked us twice here. It's pretty hard for him to have much. I'm going to just fire out here. Normally I'm not a huge fan of firing zero equity bluffs, but he's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want this pot. So I think our bet there is going to get through more than enough to turn a very tidy profit there, even though it's only a small pot. We only go half pot there, so we're getting a really, really good price on our bluff. It only needs to work a fairly small percentage of the time, so it's going to, in my opinion, that's going to turn a really, really consistent profit, even though it is only a small pot, as I said. But it's the small pots that tend to make or break your win rate. Those little spots that arise really, really frequently throughout every single session, they make a massive difference overall. If you're playing good poker and picking up those pots where other people don't want them, essentially, you'll notice a serious improvement in your overall win rate. We've got a king and a tray here. If it's folded to us, we are going to go for the steal. We do steal from the button really, really wide. This is probably a little bit too loose for some players, but I'm very, very comfortable playing post-flop. So if you're just starting out, it might not be as good a good idea to be going as wide as this on the button, but it's certainly never going to be significantly bad anyway. Having position counts for obviously a hell of a lot here. If we get 3-bet, we've got a very trivial fold, and if he calls, we're going to be able to take it down post-flop without a fight pretty often as well. So he's thinking about it. We have a raggedy ace in the big blind. This has some potential to be used as a 3-bet bluff, depending on how the action goes. If the button opens versus that stack size, it's kind of awkward. Probably would have 3-bet him small. And versus a small blind, if he decides to open, we are just going to flat call. The reason I would decide to flat call versus a small blind open is that we have absolute position, so we can play really profitable poker post flop. So there's less incentive to take it down pre-flop without a fight. So if we flat call against the button, we're out of position for the hand, which is going to be tricky. When we have position about this guy, that we can make a lot more plays. We've got a lot more options available to us because we see what our opponent's going to do first. So if he checks, we flop top. I mean, we're going to have the best hand here an overwhelmingly large percentage of the time. We're going to bet for value. He just check folds, which is, I mean, not what we wanted, but it's not a disaster either. Obviously, there are a lot of cards that can roll off on the turn there that are going to reduce our hand strength. So any card above an 8 that isn't an ace, obviously, is bad for us. Having this guy, normally I would be happy to go ahead and ISO a hand like Jack 8 here. It's a reasonably trashy hand, but we're going to assume that anyone who's open limping is going to be pretty bad. The reason I don't want to do it here is that because this guy is quite short stacked, it's going to put us in a lot of spots post flop where we're almost committed essentially, and it's not going to be good. I don't expect him to be folding much at all. So I am going to complete. I mean, folding Jack 8 here when we're getting like 5-1 on our money seems a bit absurd, but his stack size is kind of limited what we're able to do. So that's another point that's always really important, is to be aware of your opponent's stack sizes and how it impacts your decisions that you can make throughout the hand. So there, I mean, if he was in for a full $6 or $7 or the full 100 or the full 100 big blinds, the $10, I would have been ISOing there to 5x and looking to play heads up against him, because as I said, anyone who's open limping, we're going to assume is a bad player. And we're happy to play pots against them, basically. So we're really going to go out of our way to get involved against those kinds of players. The ace-5 offsuit, we are going to be bringing it in for an open. And we're going to defend our button here with the suited connectors, our suited baby connectors. Let's see if we can see a fun flop. Ideally, we would have liked a little bit of multi-way action. We don't get it, but we flop pretty damn well. We have the flush draw, and we have a backdoor straight draw as well. We get 3-bet with the ace-5, so we have a pretty trivial fold. This guy does look like he's on the more aggressive side. He's got a relatively high 3-bet statistic, but it is over an exceptionally small sample, so we're not going to be reading too much into that just yet. This guy checks. I think he's going to be check folding a reasonable amount of the time, so we are going to bet our flush draw. I mean, obviously we've got a lot of equity, but if we can take this down here and now with 5 high, it's an absolutely outstandingly good result for us. He does call. We pick up a gut shot though, which is something. I think we're going to check back here now and just try to realize our equity. If we manage to bink at 3, we obviously have an incredibly well disguised hand. And I don't expect us to have that much fold equity here. I don't think he's planning on check calling flop and then check folding turn on this kind of board very often. So I think I'm happy just to check this back, try to realize our equity, and we're not planning on bluffing river if he checks to us again. We're just going to check this one back and give it up. And when he leads, we just have a fairly trivial fold. We will be opening the pocket 8s here. We're going to be folding the deuce and the 8, of course. Potentially interesting pot brewing on the bottom left table. This guy's 4x'd and this guy has 3-bet and under the gun open, so he's showing a lot of strength here. So we don't flop an 8, but we do flop relatively well. We're going to go ahead and fire here for value / protection. We have a good shot, and our pair of 8s is going to be the best hand pretty often as well. We just take it down without a fight, and we're going to be opening the pocket 5s as well. So pocket pairs galore. And ace and jack is almost certainly going to be played. We're going to be bringing this in for a 3-bet versus the cutoff open. We definitely don't want to get 4-bet here, but we are okay if we get called. And the 9 in the tray, not much we're able to do versus an under the gun open. We're just going to let this one go. One thing that is amazing about regular tables that you don't find as often in kind of the fast forms of poker is that people play a lot looser and more passively. So a lot of players, rather than just kind of folding, like, you know, hands that are, you know, like random suited king X, kind of like king deuce suited, those kinds of hands that can flop very well but aren't going to very often. People will get involved in those hands way more frequently than they should. So overall, like, the standard of play is definitely worse at the regular tables, which is really, really nice. We have a gut shot here. We would like if we had at least one spade to go along with it, but I think on this kind of board, a c-bet will take it down often enough that this bet itself is going to be directly profitable, and obviously we can bink a 10 for the stone cold nuts as well, but we don't have to. He just obliges us and goes ahead and folds, which is absolutely fine by me. And we're going to complete here with the suited 2-gapper, or suited, yep, 2-gapper. Cannot count. Mainly because, as I said, I think this guy is going to be giving away a lot of money post-flop pretty regularly. So, again, it's the kind of hand, if he's striking me as someone who's going to be an absolute mark in the games. So we would be happy to ISO really, really wide against him. It's just unfortunate that he is so short in chips, because it makes it a lot more difficult to do that effectively, as I kind of talked about earlier on in the video. The deuce and the 9, we are going to be letting this one go. If there's any others a raise already, we're going to be folding it. And we're happy enough to open the jack and the queen from mid position. Ace-9 suited is a strong contender to be played. We are going to be 3-betting in a lot of different scenarios here. If the button opens, we're certainly going to be 3-betting it. Not a very good flop for us over on the bottom left table. We are just going to fire one and done, and we're going to fire quite small here because I think a small bet is going to accomplish the exact same as a larger bet. So we're going to go 20 cent into 53 cent. Mainly what we're essentially just going to be folding out a lot of hands that we're actually ahead of there, but that's not necessarily a terrible result, because it's going to be very tricky for us to call down there when we are ahead. So if we check back there, we're allowing ourselves to be bluffed off the hand really, really easily very often if our opponent elects to start bluffing. So by betting that really, really small amount, we are giving ourselves a really, really good price on our bluff essentially. So this guy leads on this board. We have overcards and we have the flush draw. We are going to put in a raise. We could flat call as well. Like, once we don't fold, I'm okay with that. He decides to fold himself, which, you know, is not a bad result when we only have king high. We wouldn't have minded a little bit more action there, especially because on this side you can see the outcome, and we would have hit our diamond on the turn. Pocket queen's obviously a very, very straightforward open from any position. And we got one caller. This guy is pretty aggressive, so if he squeezes, we are going to be very, very happy to re-raise and not fold. Again, it's a very small sample. We only have 22 hands in this guy, but from what we've seen so far is he's played 38% of his hands, he has been raising 33% of them, and he's 3-bet 17%. So as I said, it is a small sample, but it's enough that we're starting to get a feel for how he plays, and he seems like he's very aggressive. And at the end of the day, I mean, we have pocket queens. It's never going to be a disaster getting pocket queens in here, so we're going to just 4-bet and not fold. I actually made this a little bit too large. I should have gone a bit smaller. So he's kings, bit of a cooler, but we're not going to worry too much about it. King would be nice. Oh, that's dirty. That is dirty. We're not going to complain though, we'll take it. But as I said, I mean, I'm not upset about getting it in there at all. It's just one of those spots, especially when you have an overly aggressive player. As I said, it is a small sample, so we can't be 100% sure, but we have an indicator that he is overly aggressive, so I am very confident that overall that is going to be a profitable play against that guy. It's just unfortunate that we ran into the kings, but fortunate that we managed to get there on the river. So we are going to flat call with the jack and the 9 in position. And we're not calling here just to hit pairs. There are definitely some boards that we can attack. This is a pretty good board. If he c-bets here, we are going to float one street, but he decides not to. We are just going to bet now, and hopefully we take it down. He just obliges us and gives it up. And we're going to check back our pocket 9s here on the king high board. And when he checks to us a second time, we are going to bet to protect our hand a little bit. So he is thinking about it. We don't really hate if he calls, but we definitely don't want to get raised here in this spot. We get 3-bet with the queen and the 10. It's a pretty easy give up. And we're going to be opening any ace from the cutoff, so ace-4 offsuit is going to fit the bill nicely. We flop top pair. This is an interesting spot because it's going to be very, very difficult for us to get 3 streets of value. In a lot of spots, I will elect to check back this flop. Because there are a decent number of potential draws, I'm going to go ahead and bet at them. If this was like, you know, ace, H, tray, rainbow, I would definitely be checking this back though. The potential flush draw has gotten there. We are going to check back for pot control now. We have 2 pair, but there is 4 to a flush out there, which is not good news for us. I mean, it's not all that easy for him to have a flush when he's played it this way is the only thing. We have pocket aces. I think we are going to check this back. I would consider betting here for some value, but fair enough, we got lucky there in the turn. Not going to mind too much. We get 3-bet here when we have our ace and our ace, which is wonderful news. This is a very aggressive table so far. A lot of people 3-betting quite liberally. So we are going to bring it in for a re-raise. Let's make it 220 to go, dealer. Unfortunately, he folds there when we have the goods, but hey. We have been very, very active at this table. Hold'em Manager has actually marked me as a fish based on how many hands that I've played. I don't think we've gotten 2 out of line or anything. That can happen over small samples. We've only played 27 hands of them, but we've been in 54% of pots voluntarily, which is a huge number. But we've had a lot of decent hands to be playing at the table. It's not like we're playing overly wild, but it means that anyone who doesn't have any hands on us apart from this table will think that we are an aggressive maniac if they're in any way observant. But as I said, I mean, we know different. We've been playing perfectly reasonable holdings every time, in my opinion. We're going to defend our button here with the suited 1-gapper, and we are going to defend our big blind with the trays. No set, unfortunately. This is not a very good board for us either, because he's going to have a decent number of broadways that will have, like, gut shots with overcards and those kinds of hands. So I think we are just going to go ahead and check fold here. There are some boards that we're not just set mining there. We will continue on some boards, just that one isn't a particularly good one for us. There's too many bad runouts where we're not going to be able to continue profitably on. And easy steal with the 10 of jack. We're going to just call here. We have the flush draw. We have a gut shot as well, but obviously our gut shot isn't particularly good because any ace will have us beat in that case. But we get there with the flush immediately, which we are thrilled about. This is the kind of board where he can have a lot of strong value hands as well, so the chances of us getting paid are quite high. I don't see any reason to slow play here when he can have all the sets, he can have some straights, he can have a lot of 2 pairs. There's no reason at all to slow play here, so we're just going to go ahead and raise. It does turn our hand a little bit face up, but he can also have a lot of ace X with like the ace of hearts, like hands like ace king, ace queen with the ace of hearts and so on. If he leads here, we're going to have a very awkward decision. When he checks, it makes it really easy for us. If he leads there, I don't think we were going to be jamming. But when he checks to us, we are just going to fire a bet ourselves. And be really upset if he jams on us, but we're obviously not folding when we're this invested. Oh, that's sick. I'm not going to be surprised at all if we're beat here, but we're just way too strong to consider folding. I will expect to see 10s, queens, and kings here pretty damn often, but I mean, hey, we're just going to be going with their hand. And yeah, he has the queens, not a shocker. But I like his check there on the river. He did really, really well there, in my opinion. As I said though, if he had led there, we would have just flat called, so it would have cost him money. I mean, I guess we can even maybe consider folding that river, but I'm not in the habit of folding flushes there, and kind of when the pot is already quite large. We only need to be correct a fairly small percentage of the time, but it is kind of hard to imagine what he's doing with that as a bluff. But he can be doing it with some worse value, maybe, like hands like ace jack and so on, he can definitely be doing it with. So we're up a stack over here, and we're down a stack over here. We're about even-ish for the session overall. We're up about €1 exactly. Courtesy of that dirty, dirty suck out with the queens versus the kings. the 7-9 of hearts. We will be playing this in an aggressive manner in a lot of different situations. We're going to be bringing this in for a 3-bet versus any sort of late-ish position open. If the button opens, we're going to be 3-betting. And ace tray, if there is a late position raiser, we are also going to use it as a 3-bet bluff. We get called here, we flop a pair. We're going to start this off with a check and see what our opponent does. It's not a very good board for us. Normally I'm not a fan of just check folding when we hit a pair in 3-bet pots, but I think this board is going to have hit his cold calling range pretty damn hard, pretty damn often, so I think calling here will be a bit of a spew. Unfortunately we would have hit 2-pair in the river, but even 2 pairs isn't necessarily going to be good there. He can have some better 2 pairs. He would have, the 9 would have given him some straights if he has hands like King 10, which he could definitely play that way. He can have some Queen Jacks. He can even be flatting kind of Queens and Jacks on occasion there as well. So I think trying to continue there with our bottom pair on that board would have been a bit of a disaster. And we're going to be ISOing the limper here. So this is going to go back to what we were talking about earlier on in the video. Anyone who's open limping is more than likely going to be a weaker player. So we're happy enough to ISO, although it is possible that this guy actually posted his blind. That would make a lot of sense as well. We're going to be 3-betting the suited connectors here versus this guy. As this guy limp folds, which is kind of interesting. Most people don't tend to do that too often. We get 4-bet. This guy, overall, like, he's been, so far over the hands that we've had on him, he's been pretty snug. He's been fairly tight overall. He's been playing in 14% of hands, raising 11%. But the fact that he min opened the button is why I elected to 3-bet him. And when he comes back over the top of the 4-bet, we are just going to let this one go. Kind of a shame. Obviously it would have been nice to see it flop, but that, you run the risk obviously of that happening when you are 3-betting those kinds of hands. But overall, the amount of times that we pick that up uncontested, or the amount of times where he flat calls and we can take it down with the c-bet on the flop, will make that a much more profitable play than flat calling out of position. So we have to play post-flop poker, heads up with a hand that's relatively speculative in a fairly small pot, where it's going to be hard to get all the money in when we do flop very hard. So I much prefer taking the aggressive 3-bet line there and looking to pick chips up with the worst hand more often than not. So you'll notice that 3-betting from the blinds especially is a huge part of my strategy for beating the micros. And we're going to be 3-betting here on the same vein. This guy hasn't really been folding to 3-bets much at all, so this is very much for value. He does elect to fold this one though. And we're going to be stealing with the suited 1-gapper on the top right table. Definitely don't mind taking that one down uncontested. And a jack and a jack. So let's keep on the same vein and be relentlessly attacking the table. No action, unfortunately. We did want some there. But these things are going to happen, of course. The 10 jacks suited, we are going to flat if the cutoff opens, and we are going to raise ourselves if it's folded to us. We're not going to be folding to a 3-bet, especially versus this guy. It's this guy, we don't know anything about this guy, we've only played a single hand with him, but 10 jack suited is way too pretty a hand to be folding, when we're going to flop trip 10s especially. So he's gone quite small. I like this guy's sizing a lot. We're not folding. I don't want to raise here just yet though. I think I prefer flat calling and looking to get more chips in on a later street. So he checks to us, which is unfortunate. We were hoping for a double barrel, but we're just going to go ahead and bet ourselves. We're going to bet 150 into 250, and he snap folds, which is unfortunate. If he's check folding that turn, if we raise the flop, he is certainly going to be folding to our raise as well. So the line we took definitely maximizes our value there, but unfortunately he didn't stab at it again, which is what we wanted. The jack and the queen, again, we are going to be using this as a 3-bet bluff versus a lot of players. versus the min raise from the cutoff, we are definitely going to be using it as a raise. So he makes it 20, we make it 80 to go, sir. So we get 1 fold. Ideally we'd like 2, but again, this is the kind of hand that can flop reasonably well, reasonably often, and we can take it down uncontested with a lot of boards where we're going to both have whiffed as well. So we're going to fire here, and with the intention of double barreling a lot of cards. The 6 is a terrible card for us to double barrel. We're hoping for any card above a 10 basically, and we're really going to be attacking his kind of pocket 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s kind of hands. If like a 10, Jack or a Queen, obviously we're betting for value. If a Ace or a King rolls off, then we can bluff off those kinds of hands pretty successfully pretty often. And we're going to defend this 3-bet here with the Jack and the King in the same suit. He goes really, really small here, we're just kind of tilting, but we're just going to let him have it. And we're going to top back up. We flop top pair, top kicker on a monotone board. We are very much in check call mode here for the time being. He makes it nice and small on the flop for us, which is quite good. Same on the turn, just going to check call, and I don't see ourselves finding a fold on the river here. Easy open with the Ace Queen, obviously. I mean, he's gone really, really small every street. It does seem very value heavy, but we're just in a situation where we're getting far too good a price to ever consider folding. I'm not going to be shocked to see a hand like Ace Jack or an overpair, but he can definitely have some bluffs that he plays this way as well, so let's just go ahead and do that calling thing. So we had the aces with the Ace of Diamonds. So we got value owned hard there. I do like his overall line though, I have to say. I am impressed. Pre-flop there, we could have potentially folded. After the flop though, I think doing anything but check calling down when he takes that size is a mistake. So here we have a lot of good blockers to a lot of our opponent's King X, so we're going to fire once here. The fact that it's a multi-way pot, I expect people to play pretty straight up a lot of the time, so if they have no pair, they're just going to be snap folding. If they have a lot of under pairs, like hands like 2s, 3s, 4s, 6s, 8s, 9s, those kinds of hands, I think they're going to play reasonably straightforwardly, and we're going to be able to take it down without a fight quite frequently. Which is always a good thing when we have the worst hand in those situations. We get 3-bet though, which makes me sad. And we are going to be re-popping with our pocket 9s and opening our pocket trays. We got a caller with the 3s, which we don't mind. Let's see if we can flop something fun. No 3. We're going to check this back and play some turns. This guy just pots it, which is concerning. We're just going to let this one go now when he goes ahead and pots. And over here, I mean, we flop pretty well. We are going to go ahead and bet quite small. See if we can induce a bluff raise ever. He calls. We are going to check here and not check fold. He has some hands that beat us here, definitely. He can have like pocket 10s and jacks that play this way potentially. He can have some floats here that we're still ahead of though, and he can also have pocket 7s and 8s as well. The jack we're not really afraid of. I don't think the jack is ever going to change things. If we had the best hand pre and on the flop, then we still do, I think. Nice. And we're going to be wrapping up the session pretty quickly now. We're going to be letting the ace-9 go. We definitely don't want to be playing, even in position, playing that in a 3-way pot is going to be a recipe for disaster. Implied odds work against us there in a big way, so even if we flop an ace, we still have the potential to lose a reasonably large amount of money, because obviously if we do flop an ace, it's going to be kind of difficult to get away when the pot is already a little bit bloated. And obviously if we flop a 9, and that's the top pair, we're still going to be behind a reasonable number of overpairs as well, so I think just letting that one go is going to be absolutely fine and dandy. No action at all. So I think we are going to wrap up the video now. We are going to sit out the next big blind. So this has been Fergal from Poker VIP, and we'll be back again. This is going to be a 4-part series, so there's going to be part 2, 3, and 4 coming soon. They're all going to focus around the same theme. They're going to be all 10-0 games over at Betsafe Poker, and showing you the tips and tricks required to beat these games and ideally boost your bankroll even further. So any questions or comments if you guys have about any of the hands that we've played today, feel free to post them in the relevant social media. I'll do my best to get back to them in a timely manner, and you can also message me directly over in the Poker VIP forums as well. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and take care.